as that's happening, yes, I am back. Back in talking about something that I do daily. So I am constantly talking about Teams Voice and helping customers get that out. And PowerPoint Live seems to be having problems right now. Oh, there we go. Finally. All right. Double check, make sure everybody can see the opening slide.
Yeah, looks great.
Perfect. Yeah, Rick, I know. I'm looking forward to that as well. I mean, technically, it's actually out right now. So you can go ahead and I'm not actually going to talk about it, but remind me, ask me a question, and I'll give you a little bit more detail as we get a little bit closer into the feature set a little bit later. So it's really about Teams Voice and being able to have it all in one spot, because a lot of organizations already have chat and collab, and they already have meetings, they already have VoIP communication, right? So you could have those kind of conversations, but why not have that last piece, that when you need a dial tone, that being able to have talk to a landline and bring it in and have that kind of conversation versus what you normally do out of Teams. Let's just add that in as a solution. That's really what we're talking about from a power of Teams Voice and Teams Phone overall. But just personal information, let's get that out of the way. Don Donais, you know me from here as well as other community events. I've been working at Microsoft now for over 4.5 years. I am now a director of cloud solution architect. And some of you know that I have a side hobby. I'm a drummer in a cover band. So that's how I get all of my, that's my fun stuff off to the side. That's my LinkedIn and that's my email if you need to reach out to me for anything. So let's take a look just a little bit about what, and you hear Microsoft. Lewis did a good job talking about Copilot and those extensibility things from an agent side of things. And you've heard us here talk a lot about Copilot in general and AI, what's happening. A philosophy from Microsoft perspective, and especially when it comes to even Teams Voice, is the fact that we really are focused on AI and helping help people work smarter and better with what we do from our tools. And so this is just a quote from Kareem from the Microsoft Work Trend Index, and that's something that Microsoft puts together, talking to a lot of different companies and bringing all that information in. And really, we're just at that forefront, is what he's saying. And how is this going to help? And I think one of the questions kind of talked about what's going to happen in 5 years. We're going to see more of this integrated into all aspects of our day jobs, right? And what we do and even our life overall. But ultimately, it's the organizational leadership that needs to ensure that technology is being used wisely within the organization. So keep that in mind as we're kind of talking about all those IA pieces. In that Work Trend Index, they also go through and talk about, the struggles, the daily struggles. We're talking about being able to keep up with things because there's so much information coming in. A lot of times we're working on a very fast pace to get a turnover and get things done. It may have that mental and emotional tax that you have at the end of the week, right? So I don't know how many times you get done at the end of the week, but I feel like, wow, I did a lot and I can feel it, right? So Friday, let's go out and have that drink and then not think about anything until Monday. But, we're trying to think about that digital debt overall, and especially the last one, right? 7 out of 10 people are affected by doing that application switching. I mean, if I have to go from one place to the next to the next, as Lewis was talking about specifically with agents, being able to do in the context of Copilot and being able to call your agent as necessary, that's great. Like, why can't we do that with everything that we're working on? And that's really, the focus again, the fact is now let's bring your telephony into Teams and be able to continue on that. So, why do I even want to make a phone call from here? And there's a lot of organizations that say not everybody's going to need a phone number. Absolutely. We do see that a lot. We see that companies are, scaling back the number of phone numbers that they give out to organizations. Even here at Microsoft, it's a need as is. If you don't need it, we're not going to give it to you type scenario, right? So, but in those roles and those scenarios where you have to have that phone number or that DID, why do we even need it? Well, think about that not delaying that real-time communication and get to that person right away in whatever medium that they need, and that being maybe their phone number, right? Their mobile number, or a landline if that's the case, right? It's better to have that verbal conversation. Obviously, even better if you can see their face and have an interaction, but the next best thing would be that verbal interaction with them and build that rapport and that relationship with that person in real time, and then be able to solve that issue if there happens to be an issue. So we're not going to get away with not being able to do a phone number, right? It's still going to be there. Some roles are going to need it, some roles are not. So keep that in mind as we're moving forward. The other thing too is, if I were to come back about 3 years ago, 2 or 3 years ago, Teams Phone was not necessarily a leader. Microsoft Teams Phone was not necessarily a leader. However, that has majorly changed, especially with all the different features and capabilities that have been added into it. It is one of the leaders in the UCAS the Gartner Magic Quadrant scenario. So keep that in mind as far as the number of PSTN users. And I'll talk about all the different flavors and how you can use that. 20 million is nothing to sneeze at, right? So there's a lot of companies that are moving to it. Scenarios, we have companies that are literally moving within weeks if they have a small enough base, very easy to make that transition over, or being able to take a very complex scenario and then move that over in Teams and be able to still support them from a high availability and survivability type scenarios that they may need. All right, so let's talk about high level. What are the options that you guys have overall when it comes to Teams voice? And we're going to start here, then we're going to get into what kind of Michelle was hinting at, is like some of the features that we kind of want to talk about. And the fact somebody was asking about SMS. That's the features that we're talking about that are being added all the time to be able to help out with organizations in being able to take advantage of their what they have out there. So high level. And I like this because this really brings all of it together and really ask and show you what you're going to need and what options you have. And we'll dive into each of these a little bit. So the first one is the core control infrastructure piece. This is that ability to be able to, within Teams, be able to literally have the dial pad inside your Teams client, right? Whatever that happens to be. So that piece is the phone standard license that gets unlocked with your licensing, right? So not everybody may need it. They may have it as part of their E5 license. They may have part of an add-on with their E3 license, but that's the first step, right? So that first piece. Then it's that last piece, like that. Where does that dial? When I dial that number, where's that dial tone on the other end? And then we're talking about telco providers, right? From the telco provider side of things, we have a couple different options. The first one is Microsoft is your telco provider, right? So Microsoft, if you go through the calling plans with Microsoft, that will give you this ability to be able to request numbers. If you want to port numbers into Teams, you can do that all from Teams perspective and then run it straight from Microsoft Teams. However, if you want to be able to have, maybe you have a great relationship with your existing telcos and you want to be able to retain that. So you can bring your telco into Microsoft, and that's going to be the third-party calling plans that we see in this section. Taking about Operator Connect, where this allows us to be able to have that connection, cloud connection between that telco provider directly into our Microsoft Teams environment. And then you have that third-party call plans from that operator to, hey, I want to bring my own infrastructure. Maybe I want to be able to literally have a session border controller, an SBC sitting there that I manage, or maybe it's a virtual version of that I can manage, or I have somebody host it for me. But I want that SBC to be able to manage and connect. Maybe that's that flexibility capability. And maybe I want to have a hybrid scenario with a legacy system and Teams. I still need to have that. Well, direct routing is going to be one of those options. And then maybe it's more of that mobile side of things. So Teams Phone Mobile, again, you have that third-party call plans, and then that allows you to be able to have that mobile identity within Teams, and being literally that Teams number is on that SIM on that mobile device, so that it makes it that is the number for that device, and it's your Teams number. So we'll talk a little bit more about these connectivity options here in a little bit. Additionally, you're going to have some endpoints. Maybe you're going soft phone. Maybe you're actually going to have to do a desk phone. Maybe there's conference devices that you're going to need, right? And you want to think about that as far as any one of the deployment options that you're going to be going with. So keep that in mind as you're thinking about this. And then there might be integrations. We'll talk about that a little bit. Maybe third-party applications that can bring you more data about what's going on and analytics about what's going on with your system. Maybe you want to be able to go compliance recording and think about that as part of your regulations that you need. And other manufacturers, right? So all of our devices are partners that we have that bring their devices to work with Microsoft Teams. We'll talk about that just a little bit more as well. So high level, those are the different options you have. From that, let's dive into a little bit more about each one of those. All right, Eric, we'll hold on to the SMS piece for just a little bit. Rick, the Teams phone would take place of having an issue out mobile phone. So the SMS. All right, so we'll talk about SMS. We'll talk about that here in a little bit. Thank you, Eric, for responding. All right, so Teams calling plans. Microsoft is your operator, telco provider. Literally, if you have those call plan licenses, you can assign it to a user, and that person will, if you have that phone number available, either you request it or you port it into Microsoft Teams, they can be up and running within minutes. As soon as they have that license assigned to them and everything gets then synced up, they can get going. Now, licenses, you can have domestic and you can have international calling. That the 36 markets actually probably has changed now. It's probably more closer to 40 or 42 different markets at this point. But you could always click on this link right here, Teams Calling Plan, AKA, and that will tell you the latest version of all the different markets that you can have. So you can think about, hey, if I were to go calling plans, what areas would I need to then be able to do that for the calling plans? And I will tell you that there's going to be some areas that calling plans is never going to work. For the most part, not for a while. India, China, Russia, those areas, we're always going to have to go with another solution to be able to do it. So these areas I'm talking about, you can mix and match. You don't have to go all one or the other. The other thing, too, to keep in mind is porting and dynamic emergency calling is all a part of that. It's all based off of how you set up emergency calling. And the porting is all a part of that. In fact, I know we just recently released a new porting wizard within Teams Admin Center that makes it a lot easier to be able to go through and port those numbers into Microsoft Teams from a losing carrier. And you have the ability to, by the way, the calling plans that you have specific ones that have a certain set number of minutes. Additionally, you also can do pay as you go in some markets as well. All right, from an architecture perspective, it's very easy from our side of things. So basically what we have is that, you have your Teams users, they're going to make that Teams phone call. That voice trunk is basically connected through your Microsoft tenant on the back end, and that goes out into the PSTN network and goes behind the scenes to that person who is receiving that call. Very easy setup. I mean, pretty much if you already have Teams set up, for VoIP calling and your meetings, you have a lot of the same features already set up for your call plan side of things. All right, the next one is Teams Operator Connect. And think of this as that cloud version of direct routing that you don't really get to touch the session border controller, the SBC behind the scenes. Okay, so it gives you that flexibility to bring your own operator. And I do know there's a lot of operators around the world that are giving you that capability. And just recently, we added the ability in one of the areas that are very difficult to be able to bring things like Operator Connect and for sure calling plans. But in the Operator Connect side, we literally just added a couple partners in India. So Airtel, Tata Communications, and Tata Business now offer Operator Connect as a solution within the India location. So keep that in mind. But really, another easy way to get things set up, and you still retain that telco provider behind the scenes. right? So that gives you that ability to be able to get things provisioned, get things updated. From a telco provider, if you're moving from one platform to Teams, then for them, it's a simple move behind the scenes of those numbers so that they are accessible through Microsoft Teams. Once those numbers are available in Teams, then you can assign them to users and get them going. So it does save on infrastructure. You do not need to have SBCs or those hardware to be able to handle that behind the scenes. And it's very quick and easy to be able to get up and running. I have that in my demo tenant, and I was able to get Operator Connect set up probably within 10, 15 minutes after connecting with that company to be able to get things set up behind the scenes. And I was able to get numbers and things set up right away with them. So it's a little bit different as far as how things are done. Behind the scenes, there's a pipe. The pipe tunnel, if you want to think of it, between that telco provider and your tenant, right? So your Microsoft managed tenant sitting over here, there is that pipe that's happening behind the scenes. They have a virtualized SBC behind the scenes that they control and as part of their solution. Right, and then that number, then after it goes through Teams and into that SBC, will go out to the person that you dialed originally. So keep that in mind. It is, literally a cloud solution when it comes to this flavor, but it is very easy to be able to get up and running. Keep it in mind as you're looking for solutions overall. Teams Phone Mobile, as I was mentioning, it is that mobile device. And I think a lot of organizations that are taking a look at this specifically are looking at it because of, they don't want necessarily somebody being able to bring their own phone number, bring their own, and end up doing a lot of work on it. And then those contacts, if they leave, go with them, right? So all that data, all that information then leaves when they leave that organization. So keep that in mind, that this is literally that Teams phone number that you would get in your soft client would be on that device, right? So the nice thing about it is when you do have that on there, if you have the Teams app up there, you can literally then update it into Microsoft Teams. You can transfer it if you need to. You can do all that stuff from the Teams side of things. Yet you can still use the native dial pad. You can still use those things that you're utilizing when you're doing things inside that mobile device, right? So keep that in mind. Additionally, by the way, it is secure and reliable because it's part of the Microsoft Teams platform. So keep that in mind. With that, though, there are, right now, we don't have a lot of companies that have gone down this pipe. Right now, here in the United States, we have Verizon. I do know that AT&T is coming shortly. We just don't have a date on that. But keep in mind that this list will be expanding here this year in 2025. Direct routing is the other solution we're kind of talking about, and that's really that more flexible solution that you can decide if you want to be able to have a physical session border controller or SBC that you have and you manage, or that can be hosted either within your environment or hosted with a third-party provider. This is one of those that pretty much, I want to say almost anywhere within the globe, you can then get set up. And what I think a lot of organizations are used to right now, especially if you're coming from a Cisco environment that you actually have SBCs already set up, you can actually utilize some of those devices then to be able to do and host it through Microsoft Teams as needed. You will have to do some configuration of that SBC to be able to connect into Microsoft Teams. Once that's set up, then you'll be able to still utilize your third-party telco to be able to continue and have that connectivity as needed. So a lot of options with this. I do know that there's some partners that are offering direct routing as a service, and that basically is they're hosting that SBC, that session border controller, and then you're able to then utilize that to be able to have that connectivity as needed. Yeah, and great point that Kamana just mentioned, that the fact that direct routing numbers, now you're able to see them within the Teams Admin Center, which is something that happened here in February, where now you're able to manage those numbers within Teams Admin Center, similar to Operator Connect or even call plans. Great capability. Also look into that. There is PowerShell commands that will allow you to be able to release a number from Teams, so you don't necessarily see it inside that. So maybe you're dropping some numbers, and then you can release them from TAC, and there is a PowerShell command that kind of allows you to be able to do that as well. Yes, when we're done here, I'll see if I can find any detailed documentation on that. I do remember that got posted out there. I just have to go find it. So. And if anybody has that at their fingertips, please throw that in chat. I would appreciate that. All right, so realistically, the architecture is going to be kind of similar to that Operator Connect side of things. However, that SBC is going to be, again, the main focal point in here. And I want you to notice, if you have any legacy voice or legacy PBX scenarios, that's where they're going to connect into that SBC specifically. And legacy voice could be, maybe you're moving from a Cisco scenario, right, to Teams, and you're slowly moving it over. Or maybe you have a contact center that's maybe not Teams certified. You still want to be able to use that, but you want to use Teams to connect in, right? So have that connectivity. You can utilize that to be able to make a connectivity to and through Teams. So make sure that's something to think about when you're looking at this overall. All right, another thing I do want to kind of point out to it is, it's not necessarily an option. It's utilizing one of those options there. But think about this too, is as you're thinking about Teams as your PBX, and you're looking at the numbers and who's utilizing phone numbers and who's not utilizing phone numbers. One of the things we come around with is that a lot of organizations are scaling back the number of DIDs that they make available, right? So not everybody is using Teams or utilizing a phone number enough, right? However, maybe they have to have it once a month to be able to make that phone call, or maybe they're in a location where there is not a good 911 scenario, so they have to utilize Teams to be able to make that phone call out. So maybe they're in a location, maybe there's 4 or 5 people on there, but because of requirements, right, 911 requirements, they still need to be able to call out. But I don't want to give them a full call plan because they're not going to utilize that much of it, right? So one of the things you can do is something called shared calling, right? And Tim, thank you for finding that link. That's exactly the link I was thinking about as far as helping out with the direct routing numbers appearing in Teams. So shared calling gives us the ability to be able to have a single phone number for up to 10,000 users. And this gives them the ability to be able to call. Somebody can call in, hits your auto attendant or hits a call queue. And then from there, it goes out to those people you want to have set up for being able to call. So once I'm in shared calling, if I was one of those people that was in that shared calling scenario, I would be able to use that phone number, call out, utilizing that call plan associated with that shared calling, and be able to then use that number as I would need to, and then hang up, and that number could be represented by, could be its caller ID as my main phone number, and then they call back and use the directory to be able to find that person again. Same thing for 911. You can utilize shared calling in that scenario I was just talking about. You can use that for shared calling for 911. So if it's a building location and you have 500 people in that building location and only 400 of those don't necessarily use numbers, you can get them all in shared calling, and they can use their Teams client to be able to make a 911 call without having to have a physical number associated to it. I've also seen organizations that do things like maybe they have a physical phone, and across the organization, that physical building, right, that they could have a physical phone that's kind of the 911 phone, or maybe they're doing Teams room as part of the deployment, and they want to put all the Teams rooms so they can make a phone call to another conferencing meeting, right? So they can do that, and you can have those as part of that shared calling. So again, think about it as, you may not need to give everybody a phone number, an individual phone number, but you could use this shared calling to be able to really help. Last thing I'll also say too is if you're really interested in moving the team's phone and you need to get off really quick, we've actually implemented something called reverse migration with shared calling, where you move everybody to Teams shared calling first, and then you take your time moving into the final solution so that they can then have their individual numbers as needed. So again, if it's hey, I need to get everybody quick and up and running, this is one way to be able to do that as well. So there's a lot more information out there about shared calling, and keep that in mind. On the bottom, it does actually say this: not all Operator Connect partners support shared calling, so make sure you check with your preferred operator before you go ahead and do that. All right, as I was kind of mentioned, this kind of gives you an idea as far as how that shared calling works. The nice thing about this, and I want to talk about 911 for 2 seconds, we actually do have this set up well for a 911 perspective. So if you were to make an outbound call using shared calling, shared calling will remember you making that call for the next 30 minutes. So say, for instance, you call out and the emergency services need to call you back, right? So they'll call that number back, and then it will go directly to that person that call it, because it retained that information. So that way, satisfies those 911 requirements and make sure that they're acceptable and they can be reachable if there is a need to be able to get back to it. But ultimately, that person that's going to be calling, and by the way, I did say it's up to 10,000 people, and that's simultaneous, right? So all 10,000, if they decide to call at the exact same time, would be able to go outbound call. And the service would be able to support that up to 10K, right? And the same thing from an inbound scenario, they'd be able to do the exact same scenario. So keep that in mind. All right. Any questions? I noticed there was some stuff in there talking about, I think you were guys talking about SMS, and that's just one of the features that I think that's just really cool, that'll allow you to be able to really get more out of your team's calling plan specifically. And that's the one thing I want to make sure you guys understand. SMS is only available right now if your organization is utilizing Teams calling plan. And there is a really good documentation specifically wrapped around that. And after we get done here and we're wrapping things up, I'll go grab that, or if somebody can find it. One of my colleagues is on the technical writing team, went through and actually was the one who wrote that article specifically. Just a great job walking through that process and making sure you do it. It's not hey, you just got to initiate that and get it up and running. There's some things you actually have to put in for requests to be able to do SMS and get it in there. But let me go back. Was there any specific questions out of that? I know it's happening. It's already available right now. Let's see. Oh, I see where you could actually use SMS as an option. Yeah, there's a lot of different use cases. Specifically, I know that salespeople really like that. If you don't have a contact center capability that gives you SMS, you may have a CRM type scenario where you don't have some of those capabilities. And that gives you that ability to be able to go out and then have that conversation with somebody via SMS as needed. I know that we do have things like virtual appointments that are part of the Teams premium package that gives you SMS as part of that, which makes sense if you're setting up meetings. But if there are any other questions on SMS, let me know. But let's get into modern devices here. So as part of this, you need to really kind of consider this whole setup as far as these devices that are coming into your organization and that are going to be connecting in with Teams, right? So for the PSTN side of things, or even for just in general, even regular calls and part of that. Going back to SMS, no, at this point, it will not be available for direct routing or operator connect at this point, Ryan. So first step is going to be call plans. Call plans specifically with United States, Canada, and I think Puerto Rico was a part of that as well. And there is no site as far as if it's going to be available for operator connect or direct routing at this point. I know they're looking at it, but there is no roadmap on that as well. All right, so going back just to talk about Teams voice and Teams phone devices. First thing is you got to understand this is all built on Android, right? So we don't have a Windows-based phone device that is out there. Everything is going to be updated through Teams Admin Center. And there's a lot of different, you can do some configuration files to be able to push up capabilities out that way. And just understand there's the ecosystem, right? There's 3 companies right now that have devices, depending on the types of roles that you might have. Maybe it's a boss admin type scenario. Maybe I need to have, maybe it's a receptionist, and maybe I need to have a sidecar type scenario. We have different solutions depending upon what use cases that you may need, right? And the different operational level as far as OS level, app level. So you're going to have underneath the hood, you're going to have your actual firmware application that your device manufacturer is going to be making. They may have an OS that's riding on top of that. You're going to then have the Teams compliancy pieces, right? So that could be the Intune pieces and those side of things. And then you're going to actually have the Teams application riding on top of that. All of that is being managed and deployed through the Teams Admin Center. Okay, so keep that in mind. And I do want to point this out. Not many people actually know that as you're moving over, we do actually have a device trade-in program. So if the device is not Teams certified or doesn't work with our SIP scenarios, then you may be able to get money for those devices and then apply that towards new devices within your Teams migration. As I was mentioning, there's a lot of different endpoints specifically that you can utilize, right? So you do have obviously the soft phone type scenario, which a lot of organizations already have this deployed within their again, it's highly suggested you're utilizing certified devices. It's not suggested, just like anything else, that you go and do using the computer, right? Speaker and audio for that, right? The microphone for that. So utilizing devices is going to be a better bet. You're going to get that ability to be able to drown out that background noise and utilize AI capabilities to be able to have a better scenario. You may have all-in-one displays, or you may actually have that desk phone, right? That they're going to need depending upon that scenario. The other piece I was kind of hinting at is that you may have some devices, and those devices not necessarily are Teams native devices or certified devices. With that, you have the SIP gateway, which is not another appliance. That's not another piece of hardware that you have. It's actually something that runs inside Teams, and you can enable this within the Teams Admin Center. And this gives you the ability to be able to have those SIP points connect into Teams and still be able to use. So again, you may have legacy devices that are SIP compliant, not Teams native compliant. Or you may have PA systems that you need to get in, or even security gates, or those types of intercoms that you may be able to need to get into Teams. So those are some of the things that we're talking about when we talk about SIP gateway. There is the ability to be able to do things like inbound and outbound, call transfer, audio conferencing, meeting, dial-in, those types of things, and voicemail with those particular products. So keep that in mind. You have a couple links here. The first one right here actually talks about all the certified devices that are available right now through the SIP gateway. And then how the second one is, how do you configure that SIP gateway? Those are 2 very important links if you're thinking about moving the teams and you want these types of scenarios. I have a lot of organizations that have legacy devices. They don't want to get rid of them. They still want to use them. So a lot of them will use SIP and be able to do things like common area phone devices, right? So have that, maybe it's a kitchen phone, or maybe it's on the factory floor that you actually have a device sitting there that people can then pick up and make a phone call. Those types of capabilities give you flexibility with that inventory you may already have. And of course, we were talking about certified devices. If you're talking about soft phone type scenarios, that's very important. You make sure you have something that is certified so that it, especially with some of the AI capabilities that are coming in, those are really going to be amplified with those certified devices. And I know a lot of people are like, oh, can I use my iPods with it? Well, they're not necessarily certified. Yeah, they're going to work, but they're not going to work the way you want them to or expect them to. So keep that in mind as you're taking a look at these devices for Teams phone. As I was mentioning, Teams Admin Center is really that place where you will manage those devices, right? So inventory control can be done from there. We actually have, and that's going to be done through Intune specifically. And watch that so you can literally say these devices can come in and remember these are Android devices. So if you're utilizing Intune, we're going to have to have a different policy that's going to manage these devices versus your personal Android devices that are out there. There is configuration management that you can do through that, some zero-touch stuff that are capable. But in Teams, really, that's where you do all the Teams Admin Center. That's where you're going to do all your firmware applications and updates. You're going to be able to do health monitoring and management and collecting those logs all from that Teams devices section within the Teams Admin Center. All right, so any questions on devices? I'm not seeing anything else there. And Rick says he's getting really into the SMS piece, so I hope that you can wade through that and get some things figured out, Rick. That's it's involved, but it is possible to be able to do that. So reach out to your Microsoft team if you need any help with any of that, because it is pretty brand new. Yeah, I would agree, Chris. Management capability is great. The room side of things, that's going to be specifically for your Teams rooms. When it comes to Teams voice, everything is going to be done from a management perspective. It's going to be in TAC, Teams Admin Center specifically. So that's one thing to keep in mind as you're running through things. But I agree. From the room side of things, that Pro Portal is really, really nice. Okay, from a licensing overview, let's talk about some of the things you're going to need to keep in mind. As I was mentioning, that first kind of overall slide I was talking about, there was the, hey, you have to have that Teams Phone standard license to unlock things on the Microsoft side. So you can get that in two different ways. If you have the Microsoft E5 license, you have that Teams Phone standard license already embedded into it. So that gives you, or I should say, this is what that gives you that capability. That gives you that ability to be able to unlock the dial pad for PSTN as long as you have that connectivity behind the scenes, right? So that call plan from a Microsoft side of things, Operator Connect, Direct Routing, or Teams Phone Mobile. That's the second half of that. But from a licensing perspective, that's the first piece. Now, that may come in a couple different scenarios. Depending upon if you have an enterprise agreement or if you have a small business type agreement or licensing as well. So keep that in mind. Take a look at what you have options, but you're going to need that phone system license to unlock a lot of things. That's the first part. The calling plan is that second part, whether it be Microsoft or then the other side, which is your third-party call plans. Then it depends upon what other scenarios that you have. If you have personal devices, you don't need anything else. That's it, right? If you have PSTN unlocked and Teams Phone unlocked, guess what? You can connect a desk phone to that account. You don't need an additional license, right? So some organizations, that's the case. Some, or I should say, some other platforms, there's additional licenses for your devices, right? So here it's all a part of it. Now, you may have a shared device scenario. That could be like a common area phone, or think of it as like if I wanted to put connect other devices so that's not associated to a individual login, right? That shared device license, that's a different license that you'll have to get for those particular types of devices. Additionally, then a resource account license is the next one. This is for your auto attendance and call queues and getting those up and running. Okay, so let's talk about these in a little bit more detail, specifically the shared device and then resource. So shared device licenses, again, that is going to be for your common area phone type scenarios that you may have set up. What that's going to give you is the behind the scenes. All you're going to need is that, and then what's that call plan, whether Microsoft or third party, right? So embedded in that is the ability to do Teams. You have that phone in there. Intune is in there. Active Directory Premium Plan 1 and Exchange behind the scenes is also included in that license, right? It is a separate license. It's not part of the E5 license package. That would be something that you would need to get overall. Additionally, by the way, you can add that, any of those accounts that you have set up with Teams shared device licenses, you can add it to call queues, auto attendance, and it has other features like call park and voicemail and group pickup as needed, which makes it a lot easier to be able to use those in those types of scenarios. So keep that in mind. If you have a common area phone use case, this is going to be that license that's going to support that behind the scenes. Could you use an E5 license? Yeah, you could, but it's going to be more money to do an E5 license than doing a shared device license. So you want to think of it from a cost perspective, what's going to be the best bet for you. Resource accounts are those that are going to use for creating a call queue or an auto attendant. And I'll talk a couple seconds about what those here in a little bit. Those give me the ability, maybe it's if I want to be able to have a group call pickup, basically, that group is going to be able to access that calls that's coming in. Maybe it's support, maybe it's sales, maybe it's maybe it's HR, and you want a whole bunch of people to be able to answer that call without having to individually distribute it to everybody, right? So that call queue can do that. Or maybe I want people to be able to call into a main line and dial 1 for sales and 2 for marketing and so on and so forth, right? So that resource account supports auto attendant call queues. By the way, it's at no additional cost. As long as you have people licensed with that phone system standard license, you are going to get access to these licenses. By default, you can request 25 automatically, right? You can get those. And then for every 10 of those 10 Teams licensed users, right, that E5 or that E3 with that phone system, for every 10 of those, you get an additional 1, right? So if you have 100 of those licensed, then you get 10 more of those particular licenses, Teams phone resource account licenses, that you can use for call queues and auto attendance. Okay. So Chris, great question. Could you feasibly have a resource account with a phone number, right? So maybe it has that resource account license, and an E5 user without a calling plan. I mean, technically, now you could just they would need a calling plan no matter what. I mean, the resource account will need a calling plan. Your E5 license user will still have to have that calling plan. Calling plan is going to be necessary no matter what, right? So it's not possible to literally get that resource account with a number because they have to have the calling plan behind the scenes. So ultimately, that's not a possibility. All right. So let's break this down a little bit more, thinking about, and so the resource account will also need a calling plan. Yes, it does. Yeah, and so the way, and it depends, Chris, depends upon what kind of a calling plan you get, right? So if you get the Teams calling plan, which is the domestic or domestic international, you get a certain amount of minutes, and those minutes are pooled across everybody that has that type of calling plan. So if I have 10 people with that domestic calling plan, then all their minutes are pooled across those 10 people, right? And that's per month, right? That's a per month cost. The other option is you can use pay as you go. Then there's no pooling whatsoever. You just use and it will take it off as you need it. So depends upon how you have your calling plan set up. Same thing then with direct routing and operator connect. It's the calling plan from that side of things. So again, it's probably going to be pooled. You may get a certain amount of minutes per user pooled across the board. So, but yes, the resource account will also need to have that calling plan along with your end user as well. So Kamana talking about call queues and auto attendance, why it never forwards agents calls to external phone number. Well, number one, do you have that phone number set up inside Teams to go to that particular person if they're not available? A lot of times organizations, what we'll do is, the agents will have to set that up individually within their Teams client to be able to have it go to their phone number. That's just kind of how the Teams work specifically. Now, the call queue or the auto attendants, I can set up external phone numbers if I want to, right? So if I want to say in that on that auto attendant, dial 1 to sales, and that's going to an external phone number over here, I can do that through that auto attendant if needed. But if we're talking about the individual agents within that call queue per se, yeah, they're going to have to do that individually inside their Teams client to be able to have it go to their mobile device as soon as that comes in. So that's the one thing to keep in mind. Out there, there's not a way to configure that behind the scenes directly for that individual user. It's for their basis, on the individual basis. All right. So talking about features, and let's break it down into 3 different areas: flexibility to use, intelligent and connected, and then secure, reliable, and simple to manage. Let's break it down into those areas. So again, it's just that simplicity, that flexibility to use, seamless with everything else that I'm doing within the Microsoft Teams area. All right. So first off is, as we're diving more into that whole AI capability. And you may not know this, but AI is playing a part of everything that you do within Teams, especially from a meeting quality and sound quality side of things. So things you may see is like AI-based sound enhancements are actually happening across the board. It doesn't matter if it's a VoIP call, meetings, or a PSTN call. Things like voice isolation. Like within your client application, you have the ability to be able to have that voice isolation where if it's just background noise, or if I want to do voice specifically isolation, right? That background noise allows to pull that out. Voice isolation allows it to be able to say, hey, this is my voice. And even if I'm in a crowd of people talking, I want you to just pull my voice out of it, right? So that is also available within Teams, and that would be applicable to the Teams phone side of things. Full duplex sound and other capabilities. So it's allowing have that natural conversation, right? So that you can hear and speak at the same time, and then reduce reverberation. So for instance, if you're in a room that has an echo in it, it will actually actively then go and try to reduce that echo, so you have a much better acoustic and experience within that meeting. On the Teams phone mobile side, we kind of talked about that. I'm not going to go too far at it, but it's really about that mobile device being able to connect to, whether it's be Wi-Fi or a cellular network overall. And we'll go through that. And I want to make sure that I think there's something coming up. I want to make sure that there's sound. So give me a second and make sure sound is shared as well. All right. So again, we were talking about that whole integrated app experience. That phone number is right there within the context of Teams. You go into the calling app, you have your phone number there. You can dial a phone number from that. You can actually do a number from a contact if that's the case within any other applications that you have within Outlook, within OneNote, within Office 365 Web. If you have access to that, then you have that phone number. If it's associated to it, then you could be able to call that number through Teams on your computer then. As you know, too, you have that flexibility of being able to transfer that endpoint, and one of those options is to be able to transfer it to a phone. And so keep that in mind if you want to be able to then also, if I need to merge in, I can merge those phone number or that other call into my existing call, bring somebody in. escalate it then, and we'll go from a PSTN call to a conference call at that point, but we can bring these devices into together or even move it from a one device to that mobile device as necessary. As we were talking about, that certified device is going to be very important. The nice thing about it is even on these devices, certified devices, the experience is going to be very similar. The app is going to have a lot of the same features that you have on the desktop, where necessary, but being able to access and get into a call very easily, whether it be on a desk phone or on your desktop, or for that matter in a conference room, you'd be able to do that. All right, from an intelligent and connected side of things, you want to be able to increase productivity, save time, but then get intelligent information from those sessions and from that information that you're having. So as I was mentioning about the voice isolation, that's already out right now. You have the access to this. Things like spatial audio will make it just sound a little bit better as far as where it's at, as far as the voice overall. But that noise suppression is going to be really helpful overall as you're doing things and working through and be able to just concentrate on the voice versus being able to do everything else. The other piece is then Copilot in Teams voice. If you have those Copilot licenses already available, you know that there is this ability to be able to, in meetings and being able to do this in your context, your chat and collab, be able to then pull information, summarize as necessary. Well, this is also then available within the Teams voice side of things. So if I'm on a call, I can then get a summarization about what we talked about in there. I know this is not the same thing as intelligent recap. This is in real time. I want to know what's going on. I want to be able to have what was the sentiment from the people that were on the call about this particular topic. Right? And then what are my to-dos after the fact? I can get all that things at the end, and I can do this in context of that call as necessary. Additionally, AI is bringing real-time translation, which is also available now for your phone calls as well as meetings for that matter, and be able to then transcribe up into 30 languages. Right. So again, this is above and beyond what you have from a Teams Premium. If you have that, this is additional, and this is live in real time as well. And of course, an intelligent recap. That is Teams Premium and Copilot overall. That ability to, after the call is done, it will give me a summarization, to-dos, those types of things that will allow you to be able to get things set up overall, which is nice. Especially if you are mobile, it's kind of hard to be able to take that information. You can get that recap, and it's going to be there right away afterwards. All right, some other capabilities that you have built into the client, the desktop, as well as you have access to this through the desk phone as well. Things like setting up group call pickup. Being able to have you specify a group of people that you want to be able to have. When a call comes in, maybe it's a external call comes in, I'm away, then this group can pick up and answer that call on my behalf, right? So think of that as a kind of like a call queue without all that configuration efforts that you need to have behind the scenes, right? On things like consultative transfer. So I can then ask a question of somebody. So if, say, for instance, the call comes in and I need to check with Michelle before I transfer it over. Hey, Michelle, they're asking about Copilot agent specifically. Can you take that call? And I can chat with her. I can have a quick call with her before I transfer it to her over to that person. So I have those capabilities out of the box, and that's all from the desktop client. I can set up call delegation, and so that I can have a boss admin type scenario, right? That type of thing with a shared line appearance. And then I can do things like call forwarding, simultaneous rings, and even busy on busy settings. So when I'm busy, do X, Y, and Z. Additionally, we recently set up the ability, so when an external call comes in, I want it to go directly to voicemail, right? That way, separation between internal and external calls overall. Some other things that have recently come down the line. So you may have the need for internal development for your websites, and you want to be able to connect hey, I need help, right? Call an agent to a auto attendant or even to a call queue. If you have developers, they would be able to then quickly get things up and running and develop this on their website. So example, as you see, as they're playing this video, I want to make a call, it goes into a queue, and the first person picks up, and then you're going to be able to then have that conversation with that person right there in the website, right? So again, that does require developers to be able to use the APIs to be able to build that, but it's there right now to be able to connect in through widgets. All right. A little bit more about call queues and auto attendants. Really, that call queue is that group pickup, if you want to think about it, where we're going to use the term agents loosely in this case, but it's kind of that idea of kind of a call center type scenario, where you have the agents for that particular area, maybe it's support, maybe it's someplace else, that you want to be able to then have them take that call, whatever it happens to be. And you do have ability to be able to do some configuration through this. You can do things like music on hold. What happens if after hours? What about overflow? Those types of things. What about, hey, timeout, if nobody picks up after a certain amount of time? So you can configure this all through Teams Admin Center, or you can use PowerShell to be able to do something like that, right? Auto attendant is that, hey, that first, a lot of times it's going to be the entry point into organizations or into a department, right? So I come into your main line, it's going to be dial 1 for sales, dial 2 support, those types of things. And then it will take me to maybe a call queue or maybe another auto attendant. So if I say sales and I'm going to go to the sales department, there might be different areas within sales or finance, right? Those types of things. I can do things where I can have it go directly to a voicemail if I need to, if it's after hours, or I can have an after hours type scenario and have different numbers, right? Dial numbers as I need to at that point. You can customize audio, or you can even do things like text to speech. And we'll talk about some of the other features coming up here. Looks like Bradley has a question. Is there a plan to eventually show inbound call history within the new call queues app? That's a great question. It's actually on the roadmap. I don't think it's on the official roadmap yet, but from the call queue, and we'll talk about the queues app here shortly. I do know that they're working on shared call history with that. So yes, it is happening. Not within the next couple months, but it is going to be happening. So with that, so that's actually very fortuitous that you would say that, Bradley. So the queues app, let's talk about the queues app for 2 seconds. So we have basic out-of-the-box call queues. And then if you want to get a little bit more closer to that contact center light type scenario, this is this queues app. And I'm going to caveat this right away, that this does require a Teams Premium license, right? So Teams Premium has a bunch of different things associated to it outside of just the queues app, but it does unlock it for your supervisor and your agents in this scenario. Let's just take a quick little video.
As customer care continues to evolve, every customer-facing professional, from sales to service, requires tools designed to meet their changing needs. Introducing the Queues app for Microsoft Teams, a powerful addition to your team's experience that extends the customer engagement capabilities of your organization. With the Queues app, your team can collaboratively handle customer calls quickly and easily within the flow of work. Users can monitor and respond to calls in their queues directly in Teams, eliminating app switching for seamless call handling. Built-in call controls enable more collaborative care, leading to faster resolution and happier customers. And users can make outgoing calls on behalf of the queue they're working on. But it's not just about calls. The Queues app gives leads the flexibility to assemble and manage teams and prioritize call queues. Whether opting in or opting out users, or utilizing delegated admin capabilities, they can optimize the experience according to performance and business needs. With the ability to monitor and coach users within the app, leads can boost competence and confidence. Additionally, real-time and historical reporting provide metrics that give users and leads insights needed to ensure quality customer care. No matter who you are in the company, every interaction shapes the customer experience. Let's make it extraordinary. Connect with your Microsoft representative today to learn how you can be part of this revolution.
So to that, as you noticed, you have a dashboard for your agents and supervisors. We're talking supervisors will have access to real-time analytics as well as historical analytics. So I can see what's happening with that queue as we're progressing. They did announce on, I believe it's coming here out in March, the ability to be able to do monitor, whisper, barge, and takeover. So that would be a supervisor doing that with your agents. And then eventually here, we are going to be having Copilot be able to automatically capture the key information and give you a summary that you can then throw that into CRM or any other tools that you use for that. That is coming in the near future, but right now, a lot of this is already available for you, and it does require the Teams Premium license to be able to access it across the board. One thing I do want to quickly talk about is in queues, we, within the last 2-3 months, released this capability of doing a callback for a call queue. So say, for instance, it's going to be a 15-20 minute wait for that particular queue. You want to offer that as an option for those callers to be able to save their place and have a callback. So there's some certain things, it's all dependent upon wait time, number of calls in the queue, as well as the calls to agent ratio and how quickly they're able to get through. But giving them that option to be able to do that is now built into it, and you can set that up inside the call queue directly at this point. So I know we're getting closer to the time, so I'm going to just a couple pieces that I want to talk about from the secure and reliability side of things. So the first thing is, as of April 1st of last year, we are 5 nines uptime availability from a high availability scenario. And that is the Microsoft Teams phone, right? The calling plans, if you have calling plans, the phone service, right? The service itself that's running behind the scenes, and then audio conferencing. That means that if you're utilizing Operator Connect or direct routing, that's only part of it, right? So that's only our part of it. You still have to consider about the other part of it, right? So that side of things, we only guarantee, and that's a financially backed SLA. So if that service goes down for X number of time, you will get money back in those areas, right? So keep that in mind. We are 5 nines at this point with that service. To help with that, if you do have a need for high availability, then there is this thing called the Survival Branch Appliance, which pairs with your direct routing solution that you may have. And if you are not going direct routing, but you still need this, you're going to have to go down direct routing to be able to really get that service as part of it. This makes sure that you actually have, and this is a physical appliance, right? Or it can be a virtual appliance as it's attached to your SBCs, but it does give that capability of having that uptime, even if internet is down, because you're going to have separate trunk lines coming into these areas, this device, and be able to ensure that that is still up and running no matter what is going on with Teams. So right now, we moved from 24 hours available to 7 days available. That means you can still make phone calls and receive phone calls to that location, even if your service is, internet is down at that point, right? So that utilizes the SBA to be able to do those pieces. All right. Additionally, I do want to mention the fact that if you do have compliance recording needs out of the box, we do not have that capability of automatically reporting or recording those conversations. However, we rely on a lot of the industry standard when it comes to compliance recording. You may already have some of these companies in your organization right now. They will be able to offer that compliance piece in making sure that you're taking those recordings and then being able to hold them for based off of your requirements overall. The other thing is about 911, and we have it built into the system, but understand too is if you are out and about running around doing things, and you still need to have access to be able to call 911. That is also a part of Microsoft 365, or should I say Teams Voice. So you can then be able to get that dispatch to that particular location, depending upon your location that you have set up. And as you've heard in the past, especially some of the updates, it's all based off of that location that you have with that particular device. If it's connected into your network, it'll automatically go through that. If you're on a mobile device or if you're out at a coffee shop, then it will pick up that location services and then go from there. And then everything is done within Teams. All your management is done from a voice perspective through Teams Admin Center. PowerShell has a bit ability to be able to do some things and get things configured if you need to do things in bulk, but that's an option you have. And I'm cutting it down to the wire. But I did see that there was another question Jason threw in there. Saw there's something called the new commerce experience coming out. Jason, that's yet to be determined if that's going to eliminate the need to be able to purchase the communication credits ahead of time. We are still trying to figure that out, and that is one of those things that is brand new to even some of us internally as far as what's going to happen with those communication credits. There's a lot of things that are set up on communication credits, so there's going to be a lot of changes that are going to happen on that way. So. And then it looks like, Eric, is there any way to set the PSTN call to go to voicemail if you're in a meeting time schedule on your calendar, but you're not physically joined to the meeting? If you're talking about external calls specifically, there's no way to be able to do it in that specific scenario, Eric. But there is a way to be able to do it so that all external calls coming in can go directly to voicemail. Right, and that doesn't matter if it's got to be a PSTN call, but if somebody VoIP called you, same scenario that would happen, right? So that is a setting within calls that you can say, hey, if that external number coming in, it will not apply that to any internal numbers, if that makes sense, Eric.